All right, so this morning I was taking a look through the Model 3 Challenge website to learn a little bit more about the series, and I thought it would be interesting to take a walk through the rulebook to understand exactly what modifications are allowed on the Model 3 and just see how this kind of fits in with an overall you know, track build that you may want to do. And if racing in a series like this is something you'd like to get to someday, I think understanding the rules and where the series is going, may be helpful in planning out your build. So I'll be kind of reading this real time and just kind of understanding what it's all about. But so it looks like the series is mostly sponsored by or involved with Mountain Pass Performance, and it looks like they're running a set of Model 3 specific events within a broader Grid Life series at a number of locations around the country this year. So I think they have Laguna Seca, Willow Springs. I think I saw one out, here we go. It looks like Lime Rock Park, there we go. Willow Springs and Laguna Seca. So I think there's 3 so far. And I think the idea of the series is, hey, what they're pitching is if you're tired of track days and lapping, you want to get a little bit more into competition, and maybe time trials aren't a thing for you, or if you're not. They kind of hinted like, oh, maybe the Model 3 doesn't do well at time trials. I haven't, because of the kind of classing rules they use. Here's a series that may work for you, and it's kind of spec'd against the Model 3 and different variants of the Model 3, so it's a little more balanced. So I think it's a super cool idea. And I think those tracks I would love to check out those tracks. Unfortunately, that would mean driving around the country quite a bit. I think for me personally, I'm in Arizona. Laguna Seca would be doable. I have actually driven at Lime Rock Park many, many years ago. I did some driving in a Formula Ford when I went to a Skip Barber racing school, and Lime Rock was a ton of fun and would be a lot of fun in a Tesla as well, especially that final turn, that downhill into that long right-hand turn would be pretty amazing to check out. But I thought it'd be fun to let's just walk through the rule book and see what their expectations are on this series. And so I have not pre-read this, so you get to listen to me read in real time. All right, draft rule book. Okay. Intent: the Model 3 Challenge series is intended to make EV racing accessible and viable within the grassroots community. The series utilizes a highly capable chassis and a regulated car configuration to emphasize driver skill and reduce costs. Great. Eligible makes and models. Dual motor and performance Model 3s are allowed in the series. Rear-wheel drive variants are allowed. However, note that due to voltage drop and motor limitations, they may not be as competitive. I think this is super interesting that we're starting to see, like, how do you spec a racing series for electric cars, and taking into account voltage drop is interesting, and it's a real thing. I think if you've seen some of my previous videos, I've mentioned this, and if you ever watch some of the background videos, you can see as the voltage is going down, the battery's getting hotter, the car is much less capable. The acceleration is much more reduced. It's still plenty capable, but you really, really see it drop off. So for this series, the eligible vehicles we have 2018 through 23, dual motor performance. We have the standard dual motor. Then the long range rear wheel drive, these are single motors. Mid range rear wheel drive, and the standard range rear wheel drive. Okay. Note, a small amount of additional power will be allowed for all-wheel drive cars to compensate for their additional weight. Ballast will be implemented in the SR Plus and MR models to ensure that weight is equal to the long range. Interesting. Okay, so they'll be using a ballast system. The series will most likely move in the direction of all-wheel drive in the future, so we do not suggest rear-wheel drive ground-up builds. That makes sense. All right, car configuration and weights. Cars are all modified to similar specs, and a fully finished car can be purchased from specialists. If you're building your own video, the components below can be purchased, blah, blah, blah. Obviously, I mentioned this is a Mountain Pass. At least their recommendations here are Mountain Pass specific. What I'd be curious about is, and I don't think they say it at least here, so if you built your car using, say, parts from Unplugged Performance, which has a very similar spec list, I wonder if you would be allowed to compete. Anyway, so let's look at the kind of build requirements. So, minimum. For your dampers and springs, sport coilovers are the minimum, but it's interesting, they recommend super sport coilovers. And I think this is worth considering. So if you saw the videos I've done recently on costing and build, I picked the sport coilovers, and I think whenever I've seen people in forums, and they've tended to go with the sport coilovers instead of the super sports. I think the super sports are quite a bit more expensive. So I'm just going to actually pull that up real quick and we can take a look. Oh, okay. So I think actually the super sports are probably in their racing section. Here we go. Oh, okay. So these are their competition coilover. And in the rule book, they're talking about super sport coilovers. What I think they're referring to is actually, yeah. I think they're referring to getting the sport coilovers and then putting on the super sport spring kit. So these are slightly stiffer springs. And then what you can do is when you get those stiffer springs, you can add on the lightweight rear spring arm. So, okay, that's interesting. I thought that when I first read this, I kind of thought they meant you had to get the competition springs, which are like $6,000. That's quite a bit more expensive. But this is a few hundred more dollars, for the stiffer springs on top of these. That's reasonable. For the front brakes, they recommend just a rotor upgrade. And of course, the minimum is a rotor upgrade. And of course, you can, let me see. So they recommend, okay, replacement rotors or a big brake kit. So if you go with the big brake kit, you're fine. Rear brakes, minimum, they recommend original equipment. Recommended replacement rotors. Brake pads, racing pads, or they're selling the Paget, I think that's how you say it, branded pads. I think it's interesting that for the brake lines, their minimum spec is OE and not stainless. Again, based on everything I've read, I wouldn't risk it with the rubber lines. Maybe I don't know much, but I think I would just go with the stainless. For your front upper control arms, minimum, I'm not sure what series control part means. Maybe that's a spec part from the series. Anyway, they recommend their front upper control arms. So we could just run down this. Rear camber arms, rear toe arms. You can do the various bearings. They recommend, and then on oil coolers for the minimum, original equipment, which is none, or they recommend their drive unit cooler, or I'm not sure what open means, but there are some other options out there on the market. I will tell you, I didn't cover this before, but I actually bought the rear drive unit cooler. This probably falls under my mistake category, and I didn't install it. I actually decided to sell it, and the reason for that was I was concerned about a mistake with the drive unit cooler causing all, basically ruining my rear drive unit and that not being covered under warranty. So I was concerned about a hose coming off, spilling oil all over, ruining the drive unit, especially in a track situation. And then that would obviously not be covered. I don't know what's covered at this point with the modifications. The other thing when I was looking at the drive unit cooler was it didn't seem like a complete cooling solution where you don't have a front cooler. And I wasn't sure how much extra performance you would get out of just one drive unit cooler. So I thought about it. I'm like, okay, it's $1,000 or $900, whatever it is. If I get two more laps before the car starts power limiting, I wasn't sure it was worth the risk, like the risk reward trade-off. However, if more complete cooling solutions come out, it could be worth considering. So that was how I thought about it. For data logging, obviously their minimum is just nothing, the recommended. And Mountain Pass does have their kind of Motec logging kit. This is pretty pricey at like $3,000. And then various other, the Party Box cooling controller, I don't think you need these on the performance model. Then a whole bunch of other small options in terms of subframe inserts that I think is only on older models. The trailing and traction arms, your choice. They're not even recommending those. So those are just nice to haves. I'm not sure what the 10-pound weight penalty means here. But anyway, I think, reading this, I think what's pretty cool is you can go with a straightforward build. And if you, like the one I showcased, which is most of these parts, it's reasonably priced. I think the number I quoted in my work was all in of like $23,000, including parts and installation. You can get in that ballpark, and now you have something which can compete in this series. So it says, other than the modifications listed above, other changes are not permitted. So no aerodynamic changes, rear wing splitters, no bodywork. So this is interesting. So there are a number of modifications out there for aerodynamics. You can get rear wings, both from Unplugged, from Mountain Pass. You can get front splitters from a bunch of places. And this is not allowed in the series. And then allowed tires are 200 wear rating and 285 or now. Again, I think this is a good recommendation. What we had talked about previously is the biggest I've seen people go on the Model 3 is 305s. And that seemed like it required a fair amount of work. It required potentially some fender work, etc. And it was a real tight fit. Now, obviously here, they don't want you changing fenders, bodywork, etc. So if you keep it to 285 or narrower, that's pretty reasonable. And I think with this tread wear, again, it'll save you money on tires while still having a competitive tire. And I think the Goodyear Supercar 3, which is a nice recommended tire for the Model 3 and the one I'm running, I think it's a 200. We'll take a look. Let's go over to Tire Rack. All right. So the Supercar 3 is a 220. So that would fall under this specification. So tow hooks are required in both the front and rear. Seems easy enough. And transponders are required. Maximum starting voltage. This is interesting. So in addition to a minimum starting weight, there will also be a maximum battery voltage or state of charge for competitors listed in Appendix A. The purpose of this is to prevent excessive battery wear by having competitors start each event at 100%. That's really interesting. Ease the burden on competitors, allowing some battery percentage for transit back from charging. This is interesting because what you'll find is you'll do your track sessions, you'll go to the supercharger, and as we all know, it takes much longer to get to 100%, and then you come back. And so I think this probably keeps the overall timing of the events and burden on the local superchargers much easier. It's up to competitors to make sure their battery voltage is at or below the specified value. I wonder if you need a telemetry system to see the specified value. Ballast weight must be placed in the front of the vehicle. A mounting solution will be available for purchase. That's good to know. So I took my frunk out, and you may as well. I just left it out so I could get to some of the shock, the damper adjustments. Rewards weight. In the interest of keeping competition close and exciting, a rewards weight system will be utilized. So basically, I guess, if you do well, you get more weight. Maximum rewards is 250. Oh, wow. Rewards weight change based on race finishing position. So you finish first, plus 50 pounds. Interesting. See what else. Yep. Can't have too much damage. Acquire numbers. Safety. A roll cage is not required but is recommended. Driver's seat. The intent is to keep the vehicle street legal and without a cage. The driver's seat must remain completely intact if no cage is installed. An FIA-approved seat may be used in place of the factory seat without a cage. You're assuming your own risk. Okay. If a cage is installed, you must use a Hans device. Interesting. All right, driver's harness belt. 6-point harnesses are not allowed unless the vehicle is equipped with an aftermarket seat and approved cage. Cage cars must have a 6-point harness installed. What I wonder is, if you don't have a cage and a 6-point harness, are the 4-point harnesses like the Schroth Quick Fit Pro, which I'm using, are they allowed? Or would you have to fall back and use just the standard seatbelt, which would be not fun. All right, driver protection. Drivers must use complete wheel-to-wheel safety racing gear. Obviously, helmets, gloves must be FIA approved. You need a racing suit, racing shoes, Nomex socks. Hybrid head and neck restraints are strongly recommended for cars without a cage. Obviously, okay, you know what's interesting about this? And I think I talked about this a little bit when it came to like the cost of safety equipment. At least in the clubs that I have seen, they don't require full racing gear. I think jeans are fine, cloth shirts are fine. They don't require the fireproof equipment for just lapping. They obviously do require it if you're racing. And so this definitely is an incremental cost that you'll need to think about to have kind of the full racing fireproof gear. Multiple short races over a weekend. Qualifying session will be the first. All laps will count. The fastest lap will set the grid position. Qualifying results are also worth the same number of points as finishing results in the following race. Okay, typically a 20-minute qualifying run. Race 1 grid will be based on the fastest, okay, in reverse order. Competitors will be gridded from slowest to fastest. Interesting. Okay, all your standard kind of qualifying rules. Track challenge format. The track challenge is a unique model which combines lapping with HPDE time attack. It's not a wheel-to-wheel race, and at no point are cars putting themselves in a high-risk situation. Okay, the intent is to allow cars to have a feeling of close battle without engaging in any side-by-side, door-to-door passing, without the lead driver's consent and wave-by. Challenge grid and release. Competitors will be gridded based on qualifying or fastest lap in the previous race. Competitors will be released one by one via standing start, 5 seconds between each car. If a competitor is able to stay within 3 car lengths of the car ahead for half a lap, the lead car is obligated to issue a wave-by. At no point should the following car get closer to 1 car length. Interesting. So it sounds like it's not wheel-to-wheel racing, but yeah, as it says, it's like combining kind of your lapping sessions with a bit of racing, where you get to drive very close, and it's very clear. Like if you are able to kind of keep pace, then you're obligated to pass. So that certainly reduces the risk level. It's interesting. Here's whole the point system. All right, technical compliance. All competitors are required to calculate their competition weight. It includes driver and fluids. Scales will be provided for free. Interesting. In-car video is required. All competitors must be recording in-car video of the sessions at all times. The built-in dash cam feature is not good enough. Okay. Okay, so here we go. Base vehicle weights and max voltage. Weight listed below is the minimum allowed weight. Weight will be checked randomly. Voltage listed will be inspected on the touchscreen. Okay, so that answers the question. When they were talking about kind of battery voltage levels, I wondered how you measure that. And so they'll just look at the state of charge percentage on the screen. So that's easy. So if we look at an all-wheel driver performance, your minimum weight is 4,200 pounds. Max stated charge is 90%. So yeah, that's good. So if you went off and charged up at a supercharger, you probably have to drive back. It would bring down your state of charge quite a bit. But then that's something you can, I'm sure people will try to figure out how to get as close to possible, as close to 90% as possible when they get back to the grid. All right, cost analysis. So I'll be curious how this kind of lines up with the cost analysis I just did. An average cost to run a weekend is low compared to an ICE vehicle because of savings on electricity. Yeah, we know. We know all this. Cost outline. So the initial cost, the car, yep, 30 to 55,000. Min build list 5,000. There, your safety equipment 1,000. Total 36. Well, okay, 36,000. I think is a bit conservative. I think they're assuming you get a $30,000 car, and then your kind of entry fees totaled 1,700. And local superchargers. And so there you go. That was a quick look at the Model 3 Challenge kind of rulebook. I think it gives you a sense of what you would need to do if you're interested in competing in the series. And it certainly looks like an interesting option to get a little more racy with your Model 3 if you ever get bored of just lapping. I haven't gotten bored of it yet, so who knows, maybe that'll happen someday.